All right, guys, we're in Florida. There's some rain coming in. Got to get this done kind of quick, so I'm going to do just kind of the basics of an inspection. Being here in Florida, there's not going to be too much to look at for hail damage, but I'll still show you how to look for that and how to indicate and how to mark that and write it up on the roof and everything. Um, there is some wind damage, I know, up on this roof, so you'll get to see that. That would be good. But a couple of the basics to remember when going into these things is I always work in a clockwise position. So we'll always start at the front of the house and work around the house in a clockwise position, and then we do the same thing on the roof. And the other rule of thumb to remember is overview and then details. So when we're doing our photos, we're going to do an overview, then we're going to do close-ups of what it is that we're trying to show in our photos. So just to jump into it and keep this as short as possible, we'll start here on the front of the house. So I'll come to the house, show up, we'll step back, and we'll get an overview picture of the front of the house. Something for you guys all to know is that this over here would be considered also the front elevation because it faces this same direction as the front of the house. That also can be included in the front elevation. So if you have any damaged siding or anything on this front, we ultimately have to replace that siding. And that means that this siding is going to have to be replaced as well because it also faces the same direction. That's that line of sight rule that you hear come into play when we're talking with insurance companies. It says, well, if we have to replace this, this is also visible and it's going to have to match, so we have to replace that. So we'll take an overview shot of the house, and then I will always go to the address. We've got a little address tag on the corner right here, and take a picture of the address. That's what's going to verify to the insurance company that we're at the proper house. So we'll take a photo overview, and then we'll go closer. Take a look at all this siding on the front of the house, see if we see any wind damages, any hail damages, anything. Of course, on this one, we're not going to see too much. I'm just kind of explaining the process right now. And we would look for any loose siding areas, any damage to the shutters. Of course, these are aluminum, so if we were looking for hail damage, if we knew that there was hail in the area, we would be looking at these aluminum shutters as well. And if we were to find anything that looked like it was hail related, of course, we can put a little circle mark around it like that. That's what we want to indicate is hail. And then you can take a close-up picture of that. So we've done our overview, we've looked, but what you may want to do is do a full inspection of that elevation first, make your marks, then start to go around and do your close-up photos. So overview, and then inspection, and then close-up photos. So that's where we start with the front elevation. We'll go around to the other side. Again, like I said, just try to keep this short. We're going to get out here and we're going to take a photo of the left elevation. Going in a clockwise position. Photo of the left elevation. Then we'll go and do our inspection. And anything that we find, then we'll take close-up photos of it showing an overview. And then this is what I found on the left elevation. Inspecting the elevation, of course, talking in terms of hail. One of the ways that you can find hail dings to the gutters and to the downspouts and such, I'm sure most of you know this, is that you can mark, if you happen to see any dings or dents that may not show up very well visible in the photos, you can mark them with the chalk like this. I'm doing very light because I don't want to make too many marks on this house. And they will pop out, you know, if there's any dents or dings. And that is a good way with this sidewalk chalk to show any damages that might have popped out. We're always going to pay attention to screens when we're talking about hail. Of course, wind also, if there were high winds and it blew these screens out, then of course we're going to want to indicate that. But you'll also, especially on steel screens, some screens will be steel, some will be vinyl. Vinyl won't show as much minor hail damage. But the steel screens like these ones are, if anything were to hit that, coming down, of course it's going to make a mark. A lot of times it'll knock the paint off of it. It'll make dents in the screens and such. This is all metal, so I would want to pay attention to that if I knew that I was looking for hail damage at this particular house. So you've done an overview, then you've gone around and you've done your inspection. You've marked any indications that you see. Let me show you one of the things on vinyl siding. Of course, if you're unsure of what it is, you can tap it and you'll know the difference between a metal and vinyl panel. Vinyl will oftentimes, when we're talking about hail, show the indications right here on this edge. There will be holes or cracks or whatever. Since it sticks out farther, it has a tendency to get hit by the hail as it's coming down. That's where it'll make its impact mark a lot of times, is right there. Of course, you do see them up here, sometimes two cracks. I want to make sure that you guys realize also that we're conditioned to think of hail dings, and we're conditioned to think of siding to have been blown off or dislodged and that kind of thing. But I also want you guys to think in your mind wind-driven flying debris. So if there was a trampoline over in the neighbor's yard and it flew across and it's not there anymore, you might see something on the siding that you think, well, that's not hail and it's not wind because it didn't blow the siding off. But if something obviously bashed this siding and caused a big hash mark in it, big cracks, something to that effect, or anywhere along the house, definitely keep in mind flying debris, because that's considered wind damage. Something had blown in the wind and hit it. Shingles from another house came flying over and hit the siding. So even though it might not be blown off, might not look necessarily indicative of hail, there might be something in there that bashed that house, and of course we can document that for the insurance company as well. So then you're going to go and you're going to do all your close-up photos of everything that you found when you were doing your inspection, and so on and so forth around the rest of the house. So again, to keep this kind of short, we're going to go up onto the roof and show you what it is that I have to show you on the roof. I'm going to take the camera now for going up, because right at the edge line there's something to pay attention to. As we go up, we're going to get to the edge of the roof line right here. And this is where we're going to want to pay attention and see if there's drip edge. So we're going to want to stop right here and take some photos. We're going to want to see if there's drip edge right here. Also, right here on the top edges of the gutters is a lot of times where you can find hail damage. I only have one hand to hold on to with right now, so I won't do it. But of course, you can take your chalk and run it along this edge line, and again, any dents or dings along this edge line will pop out, and that is just more confirmation of potential hail damages to the soft metals. And if you see it on the soft metals, you're likely to see it on the shingles. Also, what we're going to be doing is paying attention right here to how many layers of shingles there are. There is generally one layer, which is a starter shingle underneath here, and then you have your first row of actual shingles. So even though this has two shingles right here, it looks like it has two shingles, this is actually only one layer of shingles. It has a starter shingle, which only runs right here along this edge line, and then it's just one layer of shingles all the way up. But this is to kind of reinforce from wind damage and such, is to put this starter shingle here and to keep water from running underneath of this first layer of shingles. So this is a one layer, and so I will take a photo showing my finger holding up like this, that it's just one layer of shingles and that there is drip edge here. So moving on up. I'm going to pass the camera off again. My camera person's not a general roof climber. Good. So now, same rule of thumb, once we get up here, course, this house is what we call a gable roof. It only has two sides, a right and a left side. It doesn't have a front and a rear slope. It doesn't have any additional gables or anything like that. You can see all the rest of the houses around here are the same way. This is what we call a gable. I like to say a Snoopy style roof, like a doghouse, just up and over. And so generally what we'll do the edge line, build it in this fashion, so there only being not being a front and only being a left. We're going to take an overview photo of this basic slope right here. An overview photo of this left facing slope right here. You can see that there's missing shingles and so forth. And then, so what we're going to do is take our overview photo, and then we're going to go this roof, and closely. So, mark this real quick. I will show you a short version of what it is that we're looking for and how we mark it. So here, as you guys know, we're going to find wind creased shingles. It looks like this. This has had some tar to try to seal it. This is older damage, but that's what a wind creased shingle would look like, and we're going to mark it like this. This one as well, over to your right, completely missing. One of the things that I want you guys to pay attention to, looking for, is once you get to an area like this, and you start to see some missing shingles, anything that indicates there might be damage there, I want you to pay attention to just surface damages. Shingles around here may also be damaged. This whole section may be damaged over here. On this particular area, it's not, but a lot of times, if you were to get your hand under like this, you might find that this whole section is lifted up. And that means that these shingles underneath here, the wind has gotten underneath and has blown it up like a parachute, and it has pulled all these shingles up over their securing nails. And so all these shingles are damaged. You have to remove these shingles to replace the ones that are underneath. So in that scenario, I would take this whole section right here like this, showing that all of these shingles, this whole section is damaged. And then what I would do is when I'm doing my close-up photos, take a photo of me having my hand underneath it there and showing that this whole section is lifted up. Sometimes you won't even necessarily see surface damage. And this is a lot of times how I find these areas. We'll start kind of down at a corner and just take my fingernails and go like this in a diagonal fashion. You'll see that some of these things will come up. And I might want to look in that area very closely, and I might find out, and I'm just going to do it on this one right here, because this roof is already damaged enough that it's not going to matter too much. And you might look under here and you might find that this shingle is pulled up over this nail, over its securing nail, like this. And so that right there is wind damage. And so when I find these things, I'm going to be looking underneath of some of these loose shingles, and when I find these things, I'll make sure to mark it like this. I will show in my photos with an arrow, maybe even write something on here that says over the nail. I can't see that very well, it wasn't a great job, but that's going to be my indication for that kind of thing, and then I can show that, and then lift this up and show it in the picture, maybe even point to it, and that is clear wind damage when you see those things. So those are kind of the ways to find the wind damage, and I also want to mention that, of course, this is a 3-tab shingle. a lot of times you'll find the shingles missing and creased and everything on these types of shingles, of course. But on a dimensional style shingle, which is a lot thicker and is a one-piece shingle, not multiple tabs like this, you don't always find creases on those shingles. Wind doesn't just cause creases quite as easily on a 30-year shingle. And a lot of times as an adjuster, when we go out to a house and we see these 30-year dimensional shingles creased all over the place and there's no missing shingles, a lot of times we're questioning what happened there. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. We know that the wind generally comes from the south-southwest, and we see a bunch of creased dimensional shingles, and then we go over onto the north-facing slope of the roof and we see the same thing. They're thinking, well, there's no missing shingles, they're all creased, these are super thick shingles. How in the world did the wind blow those things up and crease them and not blow any of them off? And how did it happen on the north-facing slope? It just doesn't make sense. It makes you think that there was something fishy going on there. So you're definitely wanting to be looking for creased shingles on dimensional shingles, but you're wanting to look for missing shingles on dimensional shingles. And what I just showed you about pulling up over the securing nail and whole sections blowing up, I call it a parachute effect. The wind got underneath of the shingle and blew that whole section up over the nails and then just sat back down. So doing a good inspection with your fingers and fingernails like this, I always will start down at a lower corner and kind of work diagonally like this, and then again to see if I find anything. That's something that you definitely want to be looking for. And when it's a little bit harder to find the indications of the creases and such, there are some shingles, deteriorated shingles, darker colored shingles. It's harder to find these wind creases. A lot of times what I will do is start over at one area of the roof and just traverse the entire roof line. Come down a few feet and traverse this line with your eyeballs looking at the shingles, looking for those creases, and traverse all the way down. So you're not going to miss anything. You're hitting that entire landscape of the whole roof slope. So then moving on, talking in terms of hail damage, all the soft metals are always a good indicator. A lot of you, most of you already know this. This will be another perfect example of what I was trying to explain. When you mark it up with the chalk, the hail dents are going to pop out. He's got some here. This is Florida. You don't get a lot of hail very often. But I can see the hail dings in here. You see when I do this, those hail dents pop right out. So no question. We're taking a photo of that. That's going to show that there was obvious hail in this area, and then it came down and it hit the roof. Generally, when you see this, you're going to know to really look closely for anything that may look like a hail hit. Sometimes it's hard to know whether it's hail on a shingle like this or not. You want to look for consistency. So we've talked about the wind damage. We've shown the wind damage. We've found it on the box vents. One of the things that I will mention, that if we find it on these box vents and the insurance company has to pay to replace these box vents on an older brittle shingle like this, we know that in order to replace this box vent, we're going to have to replace some of the shingles around it. And that's good news, because then we can do an ITEL report on these shingles and find out if this shingle is an unobtainable shingle or not. And if it's an unobtainable shingle, then just because of having to replace box vents, I've got entire roofs paid for a non-obtainable shingle. And that's another great scenario, whereas if the southwest facing slope or the only slope that actually damages, and some box vents that are showing some hail damage to them, we may get this side of the roof paid for. How are we going to get this side of the roof paid for? There's no shingles, there's no missing shingles. Well, if you indicate that there was vents, valley flashes, any of those metal accessories on that other side of the roof, then they know you got to replace those metal accessories in order to do so. Doing an insurance style inspection for hail is what we're going to do. Is on our side of things, as the contractor, we want to find the spot that we think that we see the most damages as a result of hail. So that could be over here on that side. That could be more up towards the top of the roof line because it's most exposed. There might be trees over here in the way that might have blocked some of the hail or something. So I'm going to find what I think is the best spot and the place that I see the most indications of what could potentially be hail. And we're going to mark a 10 by 10 foot square. And that's going to look like this. I'm going to make a square. I'm going to go down 10 feet. This is maybe only about 10 feet on this slope. Corner there, we go about 10 feet over. Another corner, and then another one up here. Within that 10 foot by 10 foot square is where we're going to be looking for our hail damage. The insurance company wants to know how many hits are there within a 10 by 10 foot square. That's how they're going to make their determination of whether they should be replacing the shingles as a result of the hail or not. One of the things I want to point out to you guys is a lot of times I'll see guys out there marking only things in this section right here of the shingle, this small area. And they don't mark anything else on any other shingles down in the corners, on the edges, anything like that. I want you to look for things that vary around all different parts of the shingles, and that's what I want you to indicate, because insurance companies know that the shingles generally deteriorate most right in here, right in that section that I was showing you. That's generally where the shingles deteriorate the most, and a lot of times that deterioration when it starts can actually look like a circular shape, and people will mistake it as hail damage when actually it's just the start of deterioration. Here's maybe an example that I could give you. Is down here, right here. You know, we know that it's starting to deteriorate and the granules are missing in this area, and they start to look like they may be somewhat circular or kind of indicative of hail. So I want you to make sure you're looking for things on all different parts of the shingle. Down here in this area, this is the most fortified part of the shingle, because underneath of it is another shingle, and under here is nails as well. It's harder right there. Here you can see it and feel it actually pushing down. Here it's very secure. So if we're able to show things that might look like this in those areas, we're going to want to circle them and indicate that we're finding all these things that may be indicative of hail. Now, putting your thumb in it like this, there's nothing wrong with. What you can a lot of times tell is if it's what we call bruised, and if that shingle feels a little bit bruised, if that matting underneath has been bruised, it's going to be a little bit softer. You're going to feel it. It may be a little bit concave like this. So that's one of the things you can do to feel, to figure out whether you think that this is a hail dent or not. So like right here is a good example. It's missing some granules. It looks like some granules are knocked down into the matting. I might look at that and say, I'm not really sure. Let me feel that. Oh yeah, it does feel like it's been bruised. It does feel like the granules are knocked down into it. I think that's a good one for me to indicate. What most insurance companies are looking for is going to be anywhere from 8 to 10 hail hits within a 10 by 10 foot square area. So that's what we're going to be looking for. That's what we're going to want to mark. And that's what we're going to want to take close-ups of. So once I've got this done, and I'm also going to do a brittle test on these shingles, because one of the factors of whether we can repair or have to replace a roof slope is going to be based off of whether that shingle is repairable. A lot of insurance companies have steered away from doing this because they realize it's very legitimate, and if you can find that a shingle is unrepairable, then they, unfortunately for them, have to pay for that entire roof slope, because you can't just patch shingles in. If you're going to replace one shingle, it's potentially going to damage 2 to 3 shingles around it if it's an unrepairable shingle, if it's a brittle shingle. So they've steered away from doing brittleness tests. I still do them because it's very valid and very legitimate. Have gotten roofs bought as a result of brittleness. So a brittleness test is another thing that I'll do. And unfortunately, all these things, you'll get fast at it, but all these things are things that you want to do on every facing roof slope. It's gotten to a point to where we have to prove everything on every facing roof slope nowadays. The more photos, the more documentation, the more justifications that you have and you put into that file, into that CRM system, the more photos that you have, the better. Because when it comes down to then having to justify and verify and putting a package together and send it to the insurance company, you'll have only had to go out to that house one time and you'll have gotten everything that you needed to put together that package and just email it into the insurance company without having to continue to go back out and take more photos and show them this and show them that. So a brittleness test generally just looks like this. You are going to want to unseal one of the shingles.